Hello, my dear audience. What would you do if one day you found a backpack filled with cash? Would you keep it or turn it in? Would you believe it was a stroke of luck or feel that something deep inside wasn't right? And what if, after just one night, you realized you were trapped in a dangerous struggle? A world where everyone hides a secret and human life is worth less than the goods they trade. What would you do to protect yourself and the little child you love more than your own life? My name is LyTuCam, and I have lived through it. A storm so fierce that even now, as I tell this story, my heart still trembles with every beat. My village, once peaceful and quiet halfway up the mountain, had begun to change in recent months. People no longer gathered at the tea stall by the gate. Laughter no longer echoed through the temple yard. Instead, there were cautious glances, hushed whispers that hovered between truth and rumor. Word spread that a strange group of men had appeared, calling themselves businessmen. But everyone knew who they really were: smugglers, moneylenders, and criminals. They went from house to house, pretending to be friendly, offering drinks, sharing cigarettes, then slowly asking questions about land, debts, and money. Worse still, they managed to bribe a few local officials, men who had once been trusted by the villagers. Some took the money, others simply turned away, pretending not to see. At first it was just gossip, but soon the truth became impossible to ignore. Every evening, under the eaves of old wooden houses, a few unfamiliar men would gather, sipping tea. Cigarette smoke thickened the air. Their laughter was hollow, heavy, and laced with something dark. They spoke less with words and more with their eyes, the kind of eyes that had long known both power and fear. One man, dressed in black with dark glasses, spoke in a low, gravelly tone. "We just want to do business peacefully. Can you help us with that?" The other, wearing a faded security uniform, leaned back in his chair and smirked. "Business has its own rules, and you know not everyone gets to set them around here." The man in black unzipped his bag and pulled out a thick envelope. He placed it on the table with a soft thud, a sound heavier than 1,000 words. No one met anyone's gaze. Only the sound of cicadas outside and the slow creak of an old electric fan filled the air. After a long pause, the officer took the envelope and nodded. "I'll remind the others to keep their questions to themselves." The man in black smiled faintly, pouring another cup of tea. "Good. I like people who understand." And just like that, in the sweltering mountain heat, a silent agreement was sealed. And from that day on, the gang's path to power lay wide open. Ever since they had someone protecting them within the police force, the gang began spreading its reach across the region. Small roadside shops, honest workers, no one was left untouched. If they wanted peace, they had to pay their share. They started with loan sharking and extortion, then slowly sank deeper into the trade of something far darker: drugs. That morning, the gang leader received a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was low and hoarse, saying only, "The goods are ready. Prepare your men for delivery." He didn't need to ask more. This was a big shipment, so important that he would have to oversee it himself. A black briefcase sat on the table, locked tight. Inside were stacks of thick cash and several small packets of white powder, the kind of goods that most people in the village had only ever heard about in whispers. He chose his 2 most trusted men, speaking firmly. "No mistakes. This deal will open the road for us." By late afternoon, the 2 rode off quietly. Their black motorbike glided down the winding mountain path, their figures fading into the dust and sunlight of the highlands. Under the blazing heat, a glint of metal flashed from the chain around his neck, a silent signal of the shadowed empire rising from beneath the mountain's calm surface. No one in the village knew it yet, but that journey would mark the beginning of the darkest days the region had ever seen. Faced with the gang's growing arrogance and blatant violence, the local police could no longer stand by. A sudden emergency meeting was called that very morning. The air inside the small station felt thick. No one spoke much. Only the sound of papers rustling, pens scratching across notepads, and the weight of unspoken determination filled the room. Nam, the officer in charge of the investigation, finally broke the silence. They've gone too far. From smuggling, they've moved on to threatening villagers, seizing land, and bribing officials. If we don't act soon, the consequences will be serious. The room fell quiet again. One young officer spoke hesitantly. "We can track them, gather evidence, sir. But what if someone inside has already been bought off?" Nam lifted his head, his voice low but firm. "That's exactly why this operation will include only the people I trust completely. Not a single mistake." The plan was put into motion immediately. Each officer received a specific task: to follow the transport routes, record every secret meeting, and protect the witnesses at all costs. When the meeting ended, heavy clouds loomed over the mountains. Engines roared to life one by one as the officers rode out, their silhouettes fading into the mist. The mountain road, once peaceful and calm, now carried the weight of something ominous, a quiet warning that the battle was about to begin. After hours of surveillance, the officers finally tracked down the gang's meeting point, a narrow dirt road along the forest's edge, where only the wind and the hum of cicadas filled the air. The gang leader stood there with one of his men, waiting for the buyer. His face was tense, his eyes darting from side to side, one hand gripping tightly the black bag that held their goods. From a distance, several motorbikes rolled quietly into view, their tires pressed softly against the rain-soaked ground. Through brief nods and quick glances, silent signals passed among the team. Then, with a short message over the radio, the trap was set. The officers split into two groups, tightening the circle. Just as the gang leader lifted his phone to make the call, a shout tore through the heavy air. "Police! Drop your weapons!" Everything erupted in a heartbeat. The criminals panicked, spinning around to flee. Engines roared, shouts echoed, metal clashed against metal beneath the trees. The gang leader yelled, "Run!" Their motorbike skidded forward, spraying mud behind them as it shot down the narrow path, twisting along the hillside. Wind whipped past their ears. Branches lashed across their faces, yet they didn't look back. Behind them, two police bikes accelerated hard, sirens wailing across the mountains. Nam leaned forward, gripping the handlebars tight, his eyes sharp as lightning. "Don't let them escape." The path narrowed, lined with thick brush and steep ravines. The gang leader gunned the throttle, but the tires slipped on the slick mud. The bike wobbled, then fell. They abandoned it and bolted into the forest. Rain began to pour, drumming on the leaves. Mist rose from the soaked earth, mixing with the pounding hearts of those who had just lived through a chase that could have ended in death. And while the echoes of the pursuit still trembled through the hills, I was simply walking along a nearby trail, gathering wild greens as I did every day. A cold gust brushed my face, stirring a strange unease in my chest. From afar, I heard the distant roar of motorbikes, then sudden silence. When I looked up, I saw shadows, men running frantically toward the forest, disappearing like ghosts between the trees. One of them threw a black backpack into a thicket. It tumbled once, twice, then stopped. They glanced back for a second and vanished into the woods. I stood still for a few seconds. The air around me was heavy with moisture, filled only with the faint sounds of running water and forest birds calling in the distance. Something inside me whispered that something wasn't right. I stepped forward cautiously and bent down. The black backpack was half covered in mud, its fabric soaked from the rain. When I lifted it, it was heavier than I expected. Something solid was inside, tightly wrapped. For a moment, I hesitated. But then I remembered what people had said earlier that morning, that the police were searching for a group of smugglers hiding in the area. My heart began to pound. Clutching the backpack to my chest, I hurried down the muddy path that led to the local police station. When I arrived, I handed it to Officer Nam and told him everything I had seen. He listened carefully, his expression stern but filled with gratitude. Then, without a word, he unzipped the bag. Light from the window spilled across stacks of crisp banknotes, neatly bundled and still smelling of fresh paper. Beside them was a small plastic pouch filled with fine white powder that shimmered faintly in the dim light. We didn't need to say a word. Both of us knew what it was. Heroin. The poison that had destroyed so many families in these mountains, that had stolen fathers, mothers, and children alike. I felt my breath catch, my hands trembling as I clasped them together. Fear mixed with dread flooded through me. The chilling thought that if I hadn't turned it in, I might have become part of this darkness without even realizing it. Nam slipped on a pair of gloves, carefully lifted the pouch, and placed it on the table. Then he made a call to his superiors. His voice was calm and steady, but in his eyes I saw the quiet sorrow of a man too familiar with the cruelty of life. "This is evidence from a major drug trafficking operation," he said. "It could be the key to the network we've been tracking." I lowered my head, unable to speak. The room felt heavier by the second, thick with silence, almost suffocating. Then Nam looked at me, his tone softening. "You did the right thing. Because of you, many others won't have to lose their loved ones to this anymore." I nodded, tears falling before I even felt them. Outside, the mountain rain began to fall again, washing over the earth like forgiveness, cleansing the stains of what was evil, leaving behind only a faint glimmer of light in the hearts of those who still choose to do good. After escaping the tense, breathless chase, the two men, the gang leader and his most trusted subordinate, followed a dirt path leading deep into the forest. Their breathing was heavy, sweat glistening on their foreheads. The woods were eerily silent, broken only by the shrill cries of cicadas and the crunch of dry leaves underfoot. "You're sure you dumped it here?" The leader's voice was low and sharp, his eyes blazing. Yes, boss. I'm sure it was right here, but it's gone." The subordinate crouched low, frantically clawing through the overgrown grass. They searched every inch of ground, overturning branches, peering beneath bushes, their movements growing more desperate with each passing second. The leader's face darkened. His jaw tightened until the veins in his neck stood out. "Someone's taken it," he hissed, then turned toward his subordinate, voice gravelly with rage. "Did you see anyone? Anyone at all?" The younger man froze, his face pale. I think there was a woman passing by." The leader slammed his fist into the ground, his voice breaking into a growl. "Find her. I don't care who she is. Bring me that bag." Evening fell fast. The two masked men, clad in black jackets, roared out of the forest on their motorbike, the engine tearing through the stillness of dusk. Along the way, they stopped by a small roadside stall, questioning the locals. Their sharp, probing stares made everyone uneasy. An old man sipping tea hesitated before speaking, pointing toward the direction of the village. This morning, I saw a woman, LyTucam, I think, walking by the stream. Looked like she was carrying something big. A slow, cold smile spread across the leader's face. His eyes gleamed like a knife under fading sunlight. Good. Now I know who to find. The motorbike engine roared to life once more, its echo fading into the distance as they sped toward the mountain village. And there, inside a small wooden house nestled on the hillside, LyTucam sat quietly, unaware that danger was already on its way, and each turning wheel was bringing it closer. Dusk fell slowly behind the mountains. The wind howled through the lonely roof of a small wooden house. In the distance, the low growl of motorbikes echoed, rising and fading, like wild beasts stalking their prey in the stillness of the forest night. LyTucam lifted her head, a strange unease tightening in her chest. Far beyond the ridge, two beams of headlights cut through the fog, growing brighter, closer. The wind picked up, carrying with it a chill and a sense of danger she couldn't yet name. She didn't know the men who had lost their goods had already found her trail. Meanwhile, in another part of the village, Nam's phone vibrated violently in his hand as an urgent message came through. His gut twisted, a bad feeling he couldn't ignore. A real storm was coming. Would LyTucam make it out alive? Would Nam reach her in time, before everything was too late? Subscribe and turn on the notification bell to follow the next episode of LyTucam, where truth, courage, and compassion will be pushed to their very limits.
Chúng ta vừa cùng nhau đi qua một hành trình nhỏ nhưng lại chất chứa thật nhiều cảm xúc, từ những nỗi buồn, những giọt nước mắt cho đến cả những khoảnh khắc bình yên, giản dị vô cùng quý giá. Cảm ơn bạn đã đồng hành và lắng nghe đến tận những giây phút cuối cùng. Mỗi một lượt xem, mỗi một ánh mắt dừng lại, mỗi một trái tim cùng đồng cảm đều là nguồn động lực để cho những câu chuyện như thế này được tiếp tục viết nên. Nếu cuộc sống còn bộn bề, đôi khi chỉ cần những giây phút lắng lại, ta sẽ nhận ra rằng niềm tin, lòng nhân ái và sự sẻ chia luôn có sức mạnh chữa lành kỳ diệu. Và cũng chính nhờ có bạn, người không ngại dành thời gian quý giá để đồng hành, mà hành trình của nhân vật trong câu chuyện này trở nên trọn vẹn hơn, ấm áp hơn. Dù phía trước vẫn còn nhiều chông gai, nhưng chỉ cần trái tim con người biết hướng về nhau thì bóng tối nào cũng sẽ được soi sáng bởi một tia hy vọng. Xin gửi đến bạn lời cảm ơn chân thành nhất. Hẹn gặp lại các bạn trong các tập tiếp theo, nơi câu chuyện còn tiếp tục mở ra và những bước chân kiên cường, những mơ ước lặng lẽ và niềm tin chưa bao giờ tắt. Cảm ơn các bạn rất nhiều. Chúc các bạn luôn bình an.